In ancient times, the island of Crete was home to a remarkable people, the first true masters of the sea in human history. Often hailed as Europe's earliest civilization, they built a culture unlike any other. Yet the world came to a sudden and catastrophic end, vanishing from history for millennia and leaving behind only a faint echo in Greek myths. Today we delve into the story of the Minoan civilization. The island of Crete sits at the crossroads of ancient maritime trade routes linking Europe, the Near East, and North Africa. Its strategic location shaped the defining features of the civilization that would rise there. Minoan history unfolds across four distinct periods: the pre-palatial, proto-palatial, neo-palatial, and post-palatial eras. The Minoan civilization was brought to light by the British archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans, who unearthed the Grand Palace of Knossos near modern-day Heraklion on Crete. Inspired by the legendary King Minos, the son of Zeus and the Phoenician princess Europa, Evans named the lost civilization Minoan. What the Minoans called themselves remains a mystery. Linguistic clues suggest that their name may have contained the sounds k, p, or f, and t. To the Egyptians, they were Keftiu. To the Babylonians, Kaftor. To the Assyrians, Kaptara. And to the Mycenaean Greeks, Kapta. Even the Bible mentions Kaftor as the ancestral homeland of the Philistines. Humans first settled on Crete around 11,000 years ago. For a long time, the prevailing theory was that the Proto-Minoans migrated from Anatolia, a view that's still held by many historians today. However, growing evidence including paleogenetic research points to a strong genetic link between the Minoans and the island's pre-Minoan inhabitants, as well as with the peoples of the Cycladic culture and mainland Greece. Initially, the Proto-Minoans survived through hunting and gathering, but around 8,000 years ago they embraced agriculture. They cultivated oats, wheat, olives, and grapes, while domesticating sheep, goats, pigs, and cattle, laying the foundation for a thriving agrarian society. By the early 3rd millennium BC, they had also mastered metalworking, crafting tools from copper and arsenical bronze. Painted pottery appeared, signaling artistic and technological advancement. And as settlements grew, they spread beyond the fertile lowlands into the island's rugged mountainous regions, adapting to new and challenging landscapes. From the very beginning, the Proto-Minoans relied on boats both for fishing and trade within the island. Crete's rugged mountainous terrain made coastal travel by sea far easier than overland journeys. As their seafaring skills advanced, the Minoans began trading with the Cycladic islands of the Aegean, laying the foundation for their maritime dominance. A true leap in development occurred at the turn of the 3rd and 2nd millennia BC. Minoan settlements expanded rapidly, particularly in Knossos, Phaistos, Zakros, and Malia. Social stratification became more pronounced, with wealth increasingly concentrated among the ruling elite, merchants, priests, and military leaders. To accommodate this growing class, larger and more elaborate residences were built, and over time, these structures, alongside storage facilities and artisans' workshops, evolved into vast palace complexes, marking the dawn of Minoan high civilization. Minoan palaces were not just residences for rulers and the elite, they were the political, religious, and economic centers of their society. These vast complexes served as hubs for governance, sacred rituals, and the storage and distribution of essential goods, such as olive oil, wine, grain, textiles, and metal tools. Architecturally, Minoan palaces were sprawling multi-building structures organized around a large rectangular central courtyard, with grand facades facing outward. The earliest and most prominent palaces arose in Knossos, Phaistos, Zakros, and Malia. These were massive in scale. The Palace of Knossos alone covered 13,000 square meters, slightly larger than a football field, while the surrounding urban area spanned over 10 square kilometers. Beyond housing the ruling elite, these palaces accommodated skilled artisans and military leaders. They boasted sophisticated infrastructure, including an advanced sewage system, hot and cold running water, and effective ventilation. Binding these centers of power together was Europe's first network of paved roads, an engineering marvel that helped unify the Minoan world. Shortly before the rise of their first palaces, the Minoans revolutionized their seafaring abilities by mastering masts and sails. Their boats evolved into true ocean-going ships, capable of navigating the open sea. This advancement enabled them to forge extensive trade networks with Cyprus, Anatolia, and the wealthy regions of the Levant and Egypt. The Minoans also benefited greatly from their geographical position. On one hand, Crete's location allowed them to engage freely in trade across the western Mediterranean. On the other, the island's relative distance from the great power centers of the Near East, combined with its natural isolation and formidable navy, provided a strong defense against foreign invasions. The rise of Minoan civilization unfolded at a time when the mainland was already home to societies with advanced architecture, writing systems, and material culture. Unsurprisingly, the early Cretans initially relied on imports from the Near East, bringing in finely crafted goods. These imports catered primarily to the ruling elite, consisting of luxury items such as jewelry, decorative objects, and weaponry. Yet over time, this dynamic shifted. Minoan artists quickly matched the skill of their mainland counterparts, not by merely copying Egyptian and Levantine designs, but by forging a distinct artistic identity. They became celebrated masters of jewelry making, pottery, goldsmithing, and engraving. Their interactions with the advanced civilizations of the Near East also brought technological innovations to Crete, the most significant of which were true bronze metallurgy and the potter's wheel, transformations that would shape the Minoan world for centuries to come. Crete lacked abundant natural resources, so the Minoans relied on imports to supply their artisans with raw materials. Agate, onyx, lapis lazuli, and alabaster came from the Levant, while Egypt provided amethysts and ivory. Lead and silver arrived from mainland Greece. Tin for bronze production was sourced from a distant Iranian plateau, and copper came from Cyprus, home to one of the richest deposits of the metal. In fact, the very name of the chemical element, cuprum, derives from the island's name. Minoan experts, on the other hand, were highly prized across the Mediterranean. Their distinctive product was pottery, particularly rhytons, horn-shaped vessels often sculpted into the heads of animals or mythical creatures. Other major exports included woolen textiles, finely crafted jewelry, bronze artifacts, ivory and amber goods, as well as wine and olive oil, all of which were in high demand among their trading partners. The rapid expansion of Minoan trade with the Near East sparked a cultural exchange that, while initially was one-sided, soon became much more balanced. Minoan artistic influence is evident in the frescoes adorning palaces across the Levant and Mesopotamia. Even in the royal residence of the Egyptian pharaohs at Avaris, archaeologists have uncovered frescoes either crafted by Minoan artists or created under their unmistakable artistic influence. At the end of the 18th century BC, a series of devastating earthquakes struck Crete, reducing at least 4 major palace complexes and much of the surrounding towns and villages to a rubble. For a less resilient civilization, such a catastrophe might have led to collapse. But for the Minoans, it became a turning point for renewal and expansion. Rather than decline, they responded with ambition, rebuilding all of the destroyed palaces on an even grander scale. These new structures were larger, more sophisticated, and more impressive than ever. The Palace of Knossos, for instance, grew to over 1,300 rooms and soared to 5 stories in height, a testament to the Minoans' resilience and ingenuity. Most scholars believe that the Palace of Knossos held supremacy over the rest of the island, acting as the central seat of power, while the other palaces served as regional administrative centers subordinate to it. However, very little is known about the exact nature of Minoan governance or the relationships between the different palace complexes. One of the strongest arguments for a unified Minoan state is the absence of any evidence of warfare between its major centers. Unlike earlier settlements from the pre-palatial period, which were fortified, the great Minoan cities of the palace era had no defensive walls. The prevailing theory suggests that once Crete was brought under a single rule, internal conflicts ceased, rendering fortifications unnecessary. Greek mythology tells us that Crete was ruled by King Minos, who resided in Knossos. He was said to have built a powerful empire in the Aegean, established colonies, and eradicated piracy. The Greek historian Herodotus later described Minoan civilization as a thalassocracy, a maritime power that used its naval dominance to control surrounding territories. Some scholars suggest that Minos was not a personal name, but a royal title, or perhaps the name of an early ruler that later became hereditary, much like Caesar in Rome. Others propose an entirely different theory, that the Minoans had no king at all. Instead, they argue that Crete was a matriarchal society where women, combining the roles of queens and high priestesses, held supreme authority. This idea is largely based on Minoan art, which lacks any clear depiction of a singular ruler, but prominently features women, often interpreted as goddesses, priestesses, and even reigning queens. As we just discussed, unlike the cultures of the Near East, Minoan art places a strong emphasis on women, depicting them far more frequently than men, and adorning them in richly detailed clothing. A distinct artistic convention emerged in which women were portrayed with pale skin, while men were shown with bronzed, sun-darkened complexions. This contrast suggests that Minoan men, and particularly those of the ruling class, may have spent much of their time on military campaigns or trade expeditions. In their absence, women may have taken on key political and economic responsibilities. Regardless of the exact societal structure, one thing is clear. Women played a central role in Minoan palace life and religious ceremonies. By the end of the 3rd millennium BC, the Minoans had developed a unique writing system known as Cretan hieroglyphs, likely influenced by the Egyptian scripts. Not long after, another script emerged, Linear A. For several centuries, the two writing systems coexisted before Linear A eventually replaced the hieroglyphs entirely. Linear A likely evolved as a streamlined version of Cretan hieroglyphs, simplifying pictographic symbols for faster writing. However, the fact that both scripts were used simultaneously for so long suggests that they may have served different purposes, perhaps one for administrative records and the other for religious or ceremonial inscriptions. Linear A consisted of 85 signs, each representing either a syllable or an entire word. While scholars have deciphered the phonetic values of most of the symbols, the script itself remains untranslated. How is this possible? Quite simply, we can read the inscriptions out loud. For instance, a sequence of symbols might be pronounced as da, mu, ra, ne, but without understanding the underlying language, we have no idea what da, mu, ra, ne actually means. How do we know how each symbol in Linear A was pronounced? The answer lies in its descendants, Linear B, used by the Mycenaeans, and the Cypriot script, which remained in use until the 2nd century AD. Both of these writing systems employed many of the same or similar signs, and crucially, have been fully deciphered. By comparing these scripts, scholars have been able to deduce the phonetic values of many Linear A symbols. If a particular sign represented the same symbol in both Linear B and the Cypriot script, it is logical to assume that it had a similar sound in Linear A. However, this method has a major limitation. Linear B and the Cypriot script recorded archaic forms of Greek, while the language of the Minoans was entirely different, likely non-Indo-European. And as a result, although we can reconstruct the pronunciation of some Minoan words, their meanings still remain a mystery. We can read the inscriptions, but without understanding the underlying language, we cannot interpret them. If Linear A is ever deciphered, it will offer us a deeper understanding into this remarkable civilization. However, the context of these texts is unlikely to be epic tales or profound philosophical insights. Most are probably administrative records, detailed lists of goods, tax collection reports, payment logs, and inventory records from palace storerooms. As Yuval Noah Harari has noted, writing was not originally created for poetry, novels, or even religious hymns. It was first and foremost a tool for bureaucracy, and economic management. In 1908, Italian archaeologist Luigi Pernier made a groundbreaking discovery while excavating the ancient Minoan city of Phaistos. Hidden beneath the floor of a building, he unearthed a clay disc, roughly 16 centimeters in diameter, covered on both sides with mysterious symbols. Unlike traditional inscriptions, these symbols were not carved but stamped into the clay using wooden type, making the Phaistos disc the earliest known example of printed text in Europe, possibly even the world. Printing as a technology would not reappear in Europe for another 3,000 years. And despite extensive research, the inscription remains undeciphered. A successful translation would require additional lengthy texts written in the same script, but no other examples have ever been found. Various attempts have been made to interpret the symbols, yet none have gained universal acceptance. The most widely supported theory suggests that the disc's inscription has a religious or ritual significance. This idea is reinforced by the discovery of charred bull bones in nearby caches, an important clue as bulls held a sacred status in Minoan culture. One of the most striking legacies of Minoan civilization is its art, particularly its vibrant frescoes. These masterpieces bring to life a world of people, animals, plants, and intricate decorative patterns. Through these images, we gain valuable insights into Minoan fashion, daily life, and social hierarchy. Men and women are depicted in a range of roles and statuses, from humble fishermen and saffron gatherers to elegantly dressed figures, often identified as priests and priestesses. As in ancient Egyptian art, men are portrayed with reddish-brown skin, while women are shown with pale complexions, emphasizing gender distinctions in artistic conventions. Minoan frescoes also feature a rich array of animals, including monkeys, bulls, dolphins, fish, and birds, alongside mythical creatures such as griffins. These fantastical elements add a layer of symbolism, suggesting a deep connection between nature, spirituality, and artistic expression in Minoan culture. Frescoes adorned not only the walls of Minoan palaces, but also their ceilings, wooden beams, and in some cases, even floors. Early designs focused on geometric patterns and abstract motifs, but over time, artists began creating more elaborate narrative scenes. The most popular subjects included ritual processions, festivals, and grand ceremonies. Remarkable, the Minoans were among the first cultures to paint natural landscapes without human figures, a testament to their keen appreciation of the world around them. They also frequently depicted animals in their natural habitats, capturing their movement and environment with striking realism and artistry. Minoan religion remains largely mysterious, with a few reliable sources to reconstruct its beliefs and practices. However, it was likely closely related to the religions of the Near East. One of its most distinctive features was the prominent role of female deities. Many cultic depictions feature women, though it is unclear whether they represent goddesses or priestesses. Some scholars suggest that the Minoans envisioned their supreme deity in the form of a double-bladed axe, known as the labrys. This symbol was central to Minoan religious iconography, and was also widely associated with Near Eastern storm gods, where it represented thunder. While the full Minoan pantheon remains unknown, several deities can be identified with reasonable certainty. These include a nature goddess or mother goddess, a mountain goddess worshipped in sanctuaries atop peaks, a snake goddess, likely a protector of domestic animals, a goddess of wild creatures, and a deity associated with fertility and childbirth. A key element of Minoan religion was the bull, revered as a sacred animal and likely seen as an embodiment of male strength and vitality. One of the most remarkable rituals associated with it was taurocauthapsia, the ritual bull leaping ceremony. In this daring spectacle, young men and women would face a charging bull, running alongside it as it prepared to attack. At the critical moment, the participant would grasp the bull's horns and, using the momentum of the animal's movement, execute an acrobatic leap over its back. Similar bull-related rituals and games were practiced in various Mediterranean cultures as well. Even today, echoes of these ancient traditions live on in events like the Spanish corrida, encierro, the running of the bulls, and of course Land days in southern France. The Minoans did not construct temples in the traditional sense. Instead, their sanctuaries, often small chapels, were situated in caves on mountain peaks, in forests, and near lakes, always within reach of palace complexes. Notably, one of the oldest known Minoan sanctuaries was located in the Zakros cave, which, according to Greek mythology, was the birthplace of Zeus. For centuries, the Minoans reigned over the eastern Mediterranean, unchallenged by any significant threat. But then, nature struck with catastrophic force. In the late 17th century BC, the island of Thera in the Aegean Sea was devastated by one of the most powerful volcanic eruptions in human history. The eruption of Santorini unleashed massive tsunamis that ravaged Crete's northern coast, wiping out much of the Minoan fleet and leaving coastal settlements and palace complexes in ruins. The blow was devastating, and the Minoan civilization never fully recovered. Just as they began to rebuild, their temporary weakness created an opportunity for a new rising power, the Mycenaeans, who would soon reshape the fate of the Aegean world. The Mycenaeans were the first Greeks, their civilization taking shape on the mainland around 18th century BC. For generations, they had been vassals of the Minoans, paying tribute to their more powerful neighbors. But as the tides of power shifted, the Mycenaeans began building their own fleets, and using them to seize former Minoan territories across the Aegean. Whether these conquests were met with resistance remains uncertain. The Minoans may have fought back, or the Mycenaeans may have simply taken control of the islands without a battle. Around 1450 BC, the Mycenaeans arrived on Crete and seized control of the island. Nearly all of the great palace complexes were destroyed, with Knossos being the sole exception. With this conquest, the Minoan civilization effectively vanished, giving way to a new Minoan-Mycenaean era. As the Near East plunged into the chaos of the late Bronze Age collapse, Crete became a shadow of its former self, a sparsely populated island whose once great civilization faded into myth and legend. Once again, if you've made it to the end of this video, we really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. We have a whole team behind this, and we really love seeing you follow along on our journey through ancient civilizations. We put out new content every single week. If you'd like to support the channel and help us make more videos like this, consider joining us on Patreon. You'll get early access to new episodes, work-in-progress updates, and more. Every bit of support goes a really long way. Thank you. You can also leave a super thanks down below if you'd like to give us a little extra boost. It really means a lot and helps us keep going. We hope to see you next time.